For decades, Overtoun Bridge has been described through two very different lenses. One points toward biology, instinct, and the hidden wildlife beneath the ravine. The other reaches into Scotland's oldest traditions, where certain places were believed to sit on the edge of something unseen. As the investigation continues, those two paths begin to collide, and the question is no longer which story is more compelling, but whether either one can explain the mystery on its own. If you are watching this right now, I want to ask you something. How much of history do you think is actually true? Because what you are about to hear was never meant to reach you. These are the classified files, the buried evidence, and the forbidden stories that powerful forces spent decades trying to erase. If you are someone who refuses to accept the official story, you are in the right place. Subscribe to the Dark History Files and join thousands of truth seekers uncovering what history tried to hide. Welcome back. This is the Dark History Files, and today we expose a truth that was never meant to be told. To understand Overtoun Bridge, it may be necessary to lower our view from human height and imagine the path through the senses of a dog. The stone walls that appear reassuring to people create a very different perspective for an animal walking beside them. Much of the valley remains hidden from view, while the world ahead is shaped by low angles, nearby movement, and countless details carried close to the ground. The bridge becomes less a landmark and more a corridor filled with information beyond human awareness. The experience of crossing is guided first by scent rather than sight. Moist air rising from the ravine carries traces of soil, moss, tree roots, flowing water, and the hidden presence of wild animals. Every breeze delivers fresh layers that overlap and separate in ways impossible for people to detect. What seems like ordinary woodland air to a human may feel rich with direction, distance, and recent activity to a dog. The invisible landscape becomes far more detailed than the one seen with human eyes. Then attention narrows. A faint smell grows stronger than every other signal, drawing instinct toward a single point. Familiar sounds fade behind one compelling trail carried upward through the moving air. The body responds before careful thought has time to interfere, following patterns shaped through thousands of years of hunting and survival. Within only a few steps, curiosity may become intense concentration, replacing the relaxed rhythm of an ordinary walk with focused movement toward an unseen source. This difference in perception invites an important shift in the mystery itself. Human observers often search for visible causes because vision dominates their understanding of the world. Dogs experience their surroundings through a completely different balance of senses, where smell can outweigh what the eyes reveal. The bridge therefore asks a quieter question than it first appears. Instead of wondering what people fail to notice, perhaps the deeper mystery is what the dogs perceive so clearly that remains entirely beyond the limits of human experience. A dog's nose operates on a scale that is difficult for humans to imagine. While people depend heavily on vision to interpret the world, dogs build much of their understanding through scent. Millions of specialized scent receptors allow them to distinguish odors that seem completely absent to human senses. Air flowing through the nose separates into different pathways, allowing one route to support breathing while another is devoted almost entirely to analyzing smells. A single breath can reveal information about nearby animals, changing weather, recent movement, and the age of a scent trail that people would never realize existed. This ability transforms an ordinary landscape into something remarkably detailed. A woodland path is not experienced as one continuous environment. Instead, it becomes a collection of invisible layers, each carrying separate messages waiting to be interpreted. One scent may drift from damp earth beside the bridge, Another arrives from a small animal moving somewhere below the trees. A third may have been left hours earlier along the edge of the path. These overlapping trails constantly appear, fade, cross one another, and separate again as air currents shift through the surrounding valley. Dogs also process these signals with remarkable speed. Rather than carefully examining every possibility, they often respond to whichever scent promises the strongest reward or demands the greatest attention. For breeds developed to hunt or track wildlife, this response can become especially focused. Terriers, collies, retrievers, and hunting breeds have been selectively bred over generations to recognize faint traces of prey and investigate them with determination. Once a compelling scent captures their attention, the surrounding environment may become far less important than the invisible trail leading forward. This behavior should not be confused with carelessness. From the dog's perspective, following an interesting scent is often a perfectly reasonable decision supported by instinct and experience. The environment usually provides reliable information that guides movement safely through fields, forests, and open countryside. At Overtoun Bridge, however, that familiar relationship between scent and landscape may become unusually complicated. Powerful odors can rise from the hidden ravine, while the true shape of the terrain remains concealed behind the stone parapets. The nose encourages investigation, yet the eyes receive only limited information about the steep drop beyond. Understanding this difference helps explain why researchers eventually began studying canine perception instead of focusing only on the bridge itself. The mystery could not be explored fully through human observation alone. It required asking how another species experiences the same location through entirely different senses. That shift in perspective opened a new path of investigation, suggesting that the answer might not be hidden in the stonework above the ravine, but within the extraordinary sensory world carried inside every dog that crossed it. Vision also plays a very different role in the life of a dog. Although dogs can detect movement exceptionally well, they generally perceive fine detail less sharply than humans. Their eyes are adapted for noticing motion, navigating familiar environments, and responding quickly to changes around them rather than studying distant objects with precision. Depth, distance, and the exact shape of obstacles may not always be interpreted in the same way a person understands them, particularly when part of the landscape is concealed by walls, vegetation, or uneven ground. At Overtoun Bridge, this difference becomes especially significant. The high stone parapets prevent both people and dogs from seeing much of the ravine below while walking across the bridge. A human understands that a hidden drop may exist beyond the wall because experience and reasoning fill the missing information. A dog approaches the same barrier from another perspective. If the wall blocks the view of the valley while a powerful scent drifts upward from beneath it, the animal may receive strong encouragement to investigate without fully appreciating the danger beyond the edge. Instinct adds another layer to this sensory picture. Long before dogs became household companions, their ancestors survived by following movement, tracking prey, and responding quickly to opportunities. Those ancient behaviors remain deeply rooted, even after thousands of years living alongside humans. A sudden scent, the faint sound of an animal below, or the smallest hint of movement hidden within vegetation can trigger an immediate shift in attention. The response is rarely the result of careful decision-making. It reflects natural patterns that have been reinforced across countless generations. Scientists studying animal behavior often describe this process as selective attention. When one stimulus becomes exceptionally strong, the brain naturally gives it priority over less important information. For a hunting breed, the smell of potential prey can temporarily outweigh many surrounding distractions. The dog's concentration narrows toward a single objective, while other details receive far less attention. This does not mean the animal becomes unaware of its surroundings. Instead, one signal rises above the rest with remarkable intensity, shaping movement in ways that may appear sudden to nearby observers. Seen through this perspective, the bridge begins to feel different once again. The mystery no longer centers only on an unusual location. It also involves an extraordinary sensory system encountering an environment filled with hidden information. Every step across the stone crossing may present humans and dogs with two completely different realities. People experience a peaceful woodland path. Dogs may encounter an invisible landscape rich with scents, subtle sounds, and instinctive invitations that remain almost entirely beyond human perception. Researchers who examined the reports from Overtoun Bridge noticed another intriguing detail. Many of the dogs involved belonged to breeds with particularly strong hunting instincts. Collies, Labradors, Retrievers, and several types of terriers appeared frequently in the accounts. These breeds differ greatly in appearance and temperament, yet many share one important characteristic. They have been selectively bred for generations to locate, pursue, or retrieve animals by relying heavily on scent and quick reactions to subtle environmental cues rather than careful visual inspection alone. Selective breeding has shaped canine behavior in ways that remain deeply influential today. Even dogs raised entirely as family companions often retain instincts developed long before modern homes and parks became part of their lives. A terrier may react immediately to the scent of a small mammal hidden beneath the ground. A retriever may become intensely focused on locating an object that cannot yet be seen. These responses are not learned during a single walk. They emerge from inherited behavioral patterns refined across hundreds of years for specific tasks in the countryside. At the bridge, those instincts may encounter conditions unlike those found in most everyday environments. Powerful scents can travel upward from the concealed ravine while the source remains completely out of sight. The animal receives information suggesting that something interesting is nearby, yet the landscape hides the true relationship between the scent and the terrain. Curiosity encourages forward movement. Familiar experience suggests investigation. The hidden drop, however, lies beyond ordinary expectation because the stone parapet interrupts the visual connection between the path and the valley beneath. Animal behavior specialists often describe instinct as highly adaptable rather than automatic. A dog's response depends upon many factors, including breed, age, previous experience, confidence, excitement, and the immediate environment. Two dogs walking side by side may react very differently to the same scent. One may pause briefly before continuing. Another may become intensely interested and pull toward the source. This natural variation helps explain why countless dogs have crossed Overtoun Bridge safely, while only a small number became involved in the mysterious incidents reported over the years. This perspective introduces an important balance to the story. The mystery cannot be understood by instinct alone, just as it cannot be explained solely by the bridge or the surrounding landscape. Instead, it may emerge from the meeting point between a uniquely designed environment and the remarkable sensory abilities carried by certain dogs. That possibility does not provide a final answer, but it gently shifts the investigation away from supernatural certainty and toward the complex relationship between biology, behavior, and a place whose hidden features continue to challenge ordinary understanding. By now, the bridge begins to look less like an isolated mystery and more like a meeting point between two very different ways of experiencing the same place. Humans arrive guided mainly by sight, recognizing stone walls, woodland paths, and familiar landscapes. Dogs enter that same environment through scent, movement, and instinct, assembling a picture that remains almost completely invisible to the people walking beside them. Both are present in the same location, yet each encounters a remarkably different version of reality. This difference helps explain why many early investigations struggled to reach satisfying conclusions. Human observers naturally searched for visible dangers, damaged stonework, or unusual features that could be photographed and measured. Yet if the strongest influence existed in drifting scent, shifting air currents, or inherited behavioral responses, the most important clues would remain difficult to observe directly. The absence of obvious evidence did not necessarily mean the absence of meaningful causes. It simply suggested that the bridge might be interacting with senses very different from our own. At the same time, this perspective encourages caution. A powerful sense of smell alone cannot explain every reported incident. Thousands of dogs have crossed Overtoun Bridge without difficulty, even though they encountered the same woodland, the same air, and many of the same hidden scents. Whatever happened at the bridge appears more selective than universal. Individual temperament, breed, attention, weather, and countless small circumstances may all influence how a particular animal responds during a particular moment. The mystery becomes more intricate because no single explanation comfortably accounts for every known case. Perhaps that is why Overtoun Bridge continues to invite such lasting curiosity. It reminds us that every landscape contains experiences beyond the limits of human perception. The world understood through a dog's senses is richer in invisible detail than most people ever realize, filled with messages carried on the wind and hidden within the earth itself. As this story moves forward, another possibility begins to emerge. If extraordinary scents truly rise from beneath the bridge, then the next step is to discover what lives within the ravine below, and whether those unseen animals may hold another important piece of the mystery. The bridge may appear unchanged, but the way a dog experiences it is entirely different. Before we look beneath the arches for answers, we first need to understand the extraordinary sensory world guiding every step across the crossing. Beneath the stone arches of Overtoun Bridge, the hidden ravine supports a world that many visitors never notice. Thick vegetation shelters small mammals among fallen branches, damp earth, and rocky slopes shaped by flowing water. Mink, mice, voles, squirrels, and other woodland animals move through narrow paths concealed beneath leaves and moss. From the bridge above, their presence remains almost entirely invisible, yet the valley below is alive with quiet activity taking place beyond ordinary human attention. Although people rarely detect these animals from the bridge, the environment carries constant sensory signals upward. Cool air rising through the gorge transports faint traces of fur, soil, nesting places, and recent movement. To human senses, these scents blend into the familiar smell of woodland after rain. For a dog, however, each drifting current may contain distinct information about species, direction, freshness, and distance. The invisible landscape becomes filled with messages that quietly pass through the air above the stone parapets. During the late 20th century, growing interest in the mystery encouraged naturalists and animal behavior specialists to study the wildlife living around the bridge more carefully. Their attention gradually shifted from the dramatic stories themselves toward the overlooked ecosystem beneath the crossing. Surveys identified several mammals capable of leaving powerful scent trails, particularly American mink, whose strong musky odor can linger within the surrounding habitat. This subtle change redirected the investigation toward biology instead of legend, opening an entirely different path of inquiry. The possibility that ordinary wildlife might contribute to an extraordinary mystery carries an unexpected kind of fascination. It suggests that the bridge may conceal its most important clues not within ancient stone or forgotten folklore, but inside the natural rhythms of the valley below. Every unseen animal moving through the undergrowth leaves behind invisible traces that people almost never recognize. Whether those scents truly explain the mystery remains uncertain, yet they invite a quieter question. Could the smallest inhabitants of the ravine be influencing events taking place far above their hidden world? Among all the animals living around Overtoun Bridge, one species gradually attracted more attention than any other. The American mink was not native to Scotland. It arrived during the 20th century after escaping from fur farms and eventually established wild populations across rivers, burns, and wooded valleys. Adaptable, secretive, and highly skilled at hunting, mink found the sheltered gorge beneath Overtoun Bridge to be an environment rich with cover, water, and small prey. Their presence introduced a powerful new scent into a landscape already filled with the natural smells of the Scottish countryside. Unlike many woodland mammals, mink produce a particularly strong musky odor through scent glands used to mark territory and communicate with other members of their species. These scent marks can remain noticeable to animals long after the mink itself has moved elsewhere. Along stream banks, beneath tree roots, and beside rocky shelters, the scent becomes woven into the surrounding environment. Air flowing through the ravine can lift faint traces upward toward the bridge, carrying information that remains almost completely undetectable to human visitors, but potentially striking to a dog with a highly developed sense of smell. Researchers studying the bridge began asking an important question. If these scent trails were drifting upward from below, could they trigger an instinctive response in certain dogs before the animals had any visual understanding of the landscape beyond the parapet? This possibility appeared increasingly plausible because many hunting breeds are naturally attracted to the scent of small mammals. A powerful odor alone may encourage investigation, even when the source remains hidden by stone walls and dense vegetation. The dog responds to what its nose confidently reports, while its eyes receive only a partial picture of the terrain. Naturalists also noted that mink rarely traveled alone through the environment they occupied. Their hunting routes often crossed areas used by mice, voles, squirrels, rabbits, and numerous other woodland creatures. As a result, the ravine beneath the bridge contained an intricate network of overlapping scent trails rather than a single isolated smell. Every passing animal added another invisible layer to the landscape. Wind, moisture, and changing temperatures continually redistributed those scents, creating patterns that shifted throughout the day. The environment became a constantly evolving map of hidden activity, interpreted effortlessly by wildlife and potentially recognized by any dog sensitive enough to detect it. This emerging explanation carried an important advantage over earlier speculation. It relied upon observable ecology instead of supernatural assumptions. Scientists could identify the animals living beneath the bridge, study their behavior, and examine how scent traveled through the valley. Although this evidence stopped well short of proving the mystery had been solved, it encouraged investigators to look more closely at the ordinary natural world. Sometimes the most puzzling questions begin to reveal themselves not through extraordinary discoveries, but through careful attention to details that had quietly surrounded the bridge all along. As interest in the wildlife theory grew, researchers moved beyond simple observation and began examining how scent behaves within a confined landscape. A gorge is not merely a hollow in the ground. It acts as a natural channel where air currents rise, turn, and circulate around rock faces, trees, and stone structures. These subtle movements can carry odors far from their original source, allowing scents produced on the valley floor to reach places where the animals themselves never appear. At Overtoun Bridge, this meant that a dog standing safely on the path might detect wildlife hidden many feet below. Weather became another important part of the investigation. Cool mornings, damp afternoons, and periods following rainfall often strengthened woodland smells by increasing moisture in the air and on the ground. Wet vegetation trapped scent particles before slowly releasing them as temperatures changed throughout the day. Gentle breezes then lifted those invisible signals toward the bridge. Even small changes in wind direction could alter which odors reached the crossing at a particular moment. The landscape was quietly producing a constantly shifting pattern of sensory information that human visitors rarely noticed. Animal behavior specialists found this especially interesting because dogs do not simply recognize scents. They compare them, separate them, and follow the strongest among many competing signals. A faint smell that seems insignificant to a person may stand out clearly against dozens of surrounding odors when interpreted by a dog's nose. If the scent belongs to a species naturally associated with hunting behavior, the response can become even more focused. The bridge therefore represents an unusual meeting point where concentrated wildlife scents, changing air currents, and instinctive behavior may briefly combine under the right conditions. Yet researchers also recognize the limits of this explanation. If scent alone caused every incident, then many more dogs would likely have behaved in similar ways. Instead, the reports involved only a relatively small number of animals compared with the countless dogs that crossed the bridge safely over many decades. This suggested that scent could be an important factor without being the only one. Breed, personality, attention, weather, and the exact position of an animal on the bridge may all influence what happens during those few critical moments. The investigation was slowly becoming more balanced. Rather than searching for one dramatic answer, scientists were beginning to see several ordinary influences working together. Wildlife beneath the bridge provided the scent. Airflow delivered it upward. The bridge concealed the landscape below. A dog's remarkable senses completed the final connection. None of these elements solved the mystery independently. Together, however, they formed a framework that deserved careful consideration, bringing the discussion closer to observable nature while leaving room for questions that had not yet found convincing answers. The wildlife theory gained wider attention after investigators and animal behavior experts visited Overtoun Bridge to study the environment directly. Instead of beginning with stories, they examined the ravine itself, searching for evidence of the animals believed to inhabit the valley. Tracks appeared along muddy banks beside the burn. Burrows and feeding areas revealed regular activity beneath dense vegetation. Scent markings were identified in places where mink and other small mammals frequently traveled. These observations confirmed that the hidden landscape below the bridge supported a thriving community of wildlife rather than an empty gorge. One of the most frequently discussed investigations involved animal behavior specialist Dr. David Sexton. After examining the site, he proposed that the scent of American mink could be unusually attractive to certain dogs, particularly those with strong hunting instincts. His observations suggested that the combination of concentrated wildlife scent and the bridge's concealed drop might help explain why some animals behaved so unexpectedly. Importantly, he presented this as a plausible biological explanation rather than absolute proof, recognizing that complex behavior rarely depends upon a single cause. Further discussion among researchers highlighted another important point. Dogs are individuals, not identical observers responding in exactly the same way. Age, breed, previous experiences, excitement, confidence, health, and even momentary distractions all influence behavior. A scent that strongly attracts one dog may receive little attention from another walking only a few feet away. This natural variation helps explain why many owners cross the bridge repeatedly without incident, while a much smaller number encountered the unusual behavior that eventually shaped the bridge's reputation. Scientists also considered how several ordinary factors might briefly align. A hunting breed crosses the bridge on a cool morning after recent rainfall. Air currents carry fresh mink sent upward from the ravine. The dog catches the odor at precisely the point where the parapet hides the true depth below. Instinct encourages investigation before visual awareness can fully interpret the hidden terrain. None of these circumstances is extraordinary by itself. Their significance may emerge only when they occur together during the same brief moment. Even with these observations, responsible investigators avoided claiming that the mystery had been completely solved. The available evidence supported a compelling hypothesis, yet some reported incidents continued to resist easy explanation. Certain details remained uncertain, while eyewitness accounts naturally varied over time. Rather than closing the case, the wildlife theory narrowed the search by grounding it in measurable features of the environment and canine behavior. It demonstrated that careful scientific inquiry could illuminate much of the mystery, while also acknowledging that a few unanswered questions continued to linger beneath the quiet stone arches of Overtoun Bridge. By this point, the mystery begins to shift away from the extraordinary and toward the quiet complexity of the natural world. Beneath the bridge, unseen animals follow ancient routines that have nothing to do with human curiosity. They hunt, mark territory, search for shelter, and leave behind invisible traces that become part of the landscape itself. Above them, people cross the stone bridge believing they are walking through a peaceful woodland. Between those two levels, drifting air carries information from one hidden world into another. The wildlife theory does not ask us to imagine unknown forces or forgotten legends. Instead, it invites us to consider how easily the most powerful influences can remain unnoticed when they exist beyond our senses. Humans cannot experience the landscape as a dog does. We miss the invisible trails written through scent, the lingering marks left by passing animals, and the subtle messages that transform an ordinary valley into a richly detailed map. The bridge, therefore, becomes a place where two completely different realities quietly overlap. Yet the story cannot end with Mink alone. Even if their scent explains why certain dogs became intensely interested in the ravine below, another question naturally follows. Why did only some animals respond so dramatically while countless others crossed without difficulty? The answer may lie in a delicate combination of instinct, breed, weather, airflow, confidence, and timing. Each factor appears ordinary by itself. Together, they may briefly create conditions that encourage behavior unlikely to occur anywhere else. The mystery survives because that combination cannot be recreated with certainty whenever investigators choose to observe it. For many researchers, this is perhaps the most revealing lesson hidden within Overtoun Bridge. Nature rarely offers explanations built upon a single cause. Instead, events often emerge from many small influences meeting at precisely the right moment. The bridge, the ravine, the wildlife, the moving air, and the remarkable senses of a dog may each contribute one quiet piece of the puzzle. As the investigation continues, however, another path begins to appear beyond science alone. While researchers searched beneath the stones for biological answers, local tradition had already been searching somewhere very different, within old stories, whispered beliefs, and a landscape where some people claimed the boundary between the ordinary world and something unseen had always been unusually thin. The wildlife below the bridge offers one of the strongest scientific explanations yet, but science rarely claims certainty where mystery still remains. To understand why this case continues to divide opinion, we must step away from biology and into the folklore that has quietly surrounded Overtown for generations. Beyond the stone bridge and wooded ravine, another landscape slowly took shape through stories rather than maps. Local tradition spoke of ancient ground where the ordinary world sometimes felt unusually close to something unseen. Mist drifting through the valley, old trees surrounding the estate, and the quiet isolation of the bridge encouraged these beliefs to settle naturally into the setting. Over time, Overtown became more than a place on the Scottish landscape. It entered a world shaped equally by memory, imagination, and inherited folklore. Walking through the estate could awaken impressions difficult to explain with simple observation alone. The soft echo of footsteps mixed with distant water hidden below the bridge. Cool air carried the scent of damp earth while pale mist gathered between the trees before slowly lifting into the morning light. Familiar woodland sounds occasionally faded behind unexpected silence, inviting visitors to notice their own thoughts as much as the landscape itself. The atmosphere encouraged reflection, allowing old stories to feel strangely connected to the surroundings. As reports of the dogs spread, local conversations gradually shifted in a different direction. People who had once spoken only of unusual incidents began recalling older tales passed quietly through families and neighboring communities. Stories of wandering spirits, unseen presences, and places where two worlds seemed unusually close found new listeners. The mystery surrounding the bridge encouraged forgotten folklore to return, giving ancient beliefs renewed attention at a moment when ordinary explanations still felt incomplete. Whether these legends describe history or human imagination remains an open question. Yet their lasting influence reveals something important about the way people respond to mysteries that resist easy answers. When certainty remains beyond reach, stories often become another way of exploring the unknown. At Overtoun Bridge, folklore did not replace the search for evidence. Instead, it grew beside it, offering a different kind of explanation shaped not by measurement or experiment, but by generations of quiet belief carried through the Scottish landscape. Long before Overtoun Bridge became known around the world, Scotland already possessed a rich tradition of stories tied to its hills, forests, rivers, and ancient estates. Across the country, certain places were believed to carry an unusual presence that could not be measured or easily explained. Lonely glens, standing stones, ruined castles, and quiet woodlands often became the setting for tales passed from one generation to the next. These traditions were rarely presented as proven fact. Instead, they survived because people continued sharing them, allowing each retelling to preserve a sense of wonder alongside uncertainty. One of the most enduring ideas within Scottish folklore is the belief in what some traditions call a thin place. This phrase describes a location where the boundary between the ordinary world and a spiritual realm is thought to feel unusually close. Such places are not defined by dramatic appearances. They may look entirely ordinary, while carrying a quiet reputation that encourages contemplation and caution. Mist, isolation, changing weather, and deep natural beauty often strengthen these associations, inviting people to feel that the landscape contains more than can be seen with the eye alone. As Overtoun Bridge gained its mysterious reputation, some local residents began connecting it with these older beliefs. The wooded ravine, hidden water, and persistent mist seemed to fit naturally within traditional descriptions of places where unseen forces might linger. Visitors arriving with knowledge of the mystery often interpreted the surroundings through this existing folklore. The environment itself encouraged imagination. Dense woodland concealed distant views. Shifting clouds altered the light without warning, and quiet stretches of the estate offered long moments where ordinary sounds faded into the background. These experiences allowed traditional stories to feel unexpectedly relevant, even for people who had never considered folklore before arriving. Another feature common to many local legends involves wandering spirits attached to particular landscapes rather than individual buildings. Unlike the dramatic ghosts often portrayed in modern fiction, these stories describe subtle presences that reveal themselves through unusual feelings, unexplained impressions, or a quiet sense that a place carries memories beyond recorded history. Whether understood as spiritual belief, cultural symbolism, or the natural power of suggestion, such traditions influenced the way many people approached Overtoun Bridge after its reputation began to spread. Importantly, these legends developed alongside the mystery rather than before every reported incident. The bridge did not begin its history as Scotland's most famous haunted location. Instead, its growing reputation encouraged older folklore to settle around it, creating a dialogue between historical events and inherited belief. Science continued searching for biological and environmental explanations, while folklore offered another language for exploring uncertainty. Together, they transformed Overtoun Bridge into more than a physical crossing, making it a place where two very different ways of understanding the unknown quietly met. As the mystery spread beyond the local community, each new visitor arrived carrying different expectations. Some came after reading newspaper reports. Others had seen television documentaries or heard the story from friends. By the time they stepped onto the bridge, the landscape was no longer entirely unfamiliar. Knowledge traveled ahead of them, quietly shaping the way they interpreted every sound, every movement of mist, and every shadow beneath the trees. The place itself had not changed, yet the experience of entering it often had. This quiet influence is deeply rooted in the way human perception works. When people encounter a location already surrounded by unusual stories, they naturally become more attentive to details that might otherwise pass unnoticed. A brief silence feels longer. A distant echo seems more significant. The unexpected movement of branches in the wind invites closer attention than it would during an ordinary woodland walk. None of these experiences requires supernatural causes. They emerge because expectation gently guides observation, encouraging the mind to search for meaning within an unfamiliar environment. Folklore has always grown through this delicate relationship between place and memory. A story rarely survives because it offers certainty. It endures because each generation discovers something within it that feels personally meaningful. At Overtoun Bridge, whispered conversations about wandering spirits and unseen presences became woven into the identity of the landscape itself. Visitors repeated what they had heard, adding small details from their own experiences before passing the stories onward. In this way, folklore became a living tradition rather than a fixed collection of ancient beliefs. Some local accounts even suggested that animals might sense what humans could not. According to these traditions, dogs possessed an unusual awareness of unseen forces, responding to presences hidden beyond ordinary perception. Such beliefs appear in many cultures and long predate the mystery of Overtoun Bridge. They reflect a widespread idea that animals notice aspects of the world overlooked by people, whether understood as spiritual insight or simply recognition of their remarkable senses. These stories found a natural home within the growing mystery surrounding the bridge. By this stage, the legend had developed a life of its own. Each unanswered question strengthened the folklore, while each familiar story encouraged fresh curiosity. The bridge remained a real place built from Victorian stone, standing above a Scottish ravine shaped by geology and time. Yet alongside that physical reality, another landscape had quietly emerged, formed through memory, belief, and imagination. Anyone seeking to understand Overtoun Bridge now found themselves crossing not only a stone structure, but also a boundary between recorded history and the enduring power of human storytelling. As stories surrounding Overtoun Bridge traveled farther, they gradually became more elaborate. A quiet local mystery entered books, magazine articles, documentaries, and conversations shared far beyond Scotland. Each retelling introduced the bridge to new audiences who often encountered the legend before they ever learned about its history or geography. For many people, the folklore became the first doorway into the mystery. By the time they discovered the bridge's physical setting, the landscape was already colored by narratives of unseen forces and lingering presences. One particular belief appeared repeatedly in discussions about the bridge. Some visitors described the estate as feeling unusually peaceful while, at the same time, carrying an almost unspoken sense of distance from ordinary life. The combination of ancient woodland, changing mist, and the hidden ravine encouraged quiet reflection. Rather than producing dramatic experiences, the surroundings often inspired subtle emotional responses that people struggled to describe with precise language. Those personal impressions naturally found expression through the familiar vocabulary of folklore, giving shape to feelings that otherwise remained difficult to explain. Local tradition also reflected Scotland's long relationship with landscapes that inspire both admiration and caution. Mountains, lochs, forests, and remote valleys have often been understood as places deserving respect because nature itself can be unpredictable. Within that wider cultural tradition, stories about unusual locations serve not only as entertainment, but also as reminders that appearances may conceal unexpected realities. Overtoun Bridge entered this tradition almost naturally. Its hidden gorge, quiet atmosphere, and unexplained reports encouraged people to see it as another place where ordinary understanding might not reveal the complete picture. Interestingly, even those who rejected supernatural explanations sometimes found themselves speaking about the bridge in unusually careful ways. They might dismiss ghost stories while admitting that the atmosphere felt distinctive, or question old legends while acknowledging that the setting encouraged thoughtful silence. This overlap revealed something important. Folklore was influencing language as much as belief. People searched for words capable of describing an experience that felt emotionally different from an ordinary walk through the countryside, even when they believed entirely natural explanations would eventually account for the mystery. Viewed from this perspective, the legends surrounding Overtoun Bridge become part of its history rather than distractions from it. They reveal how communities respond when unusual events resist immediate explanation, weaving memory, culture, and imagination into the identity of a place. Whether one accepts these stories as spiritual tradition, symbolic storytelling, or reflections of human psychology, they remain inseparable from the bridge's modern reputation. The folklore does not settle the mystery, but it explains why the bridge came to occupy such a powerful place within Scotland's cultural landscape. where history and belief continue to stand quietly beside one another. By the end of this chapter, the bridge carries two identities that exist side by side. One belongs to the measurable world of stone, woodland, wildlife, and careful investigation. The other lives within stories that have traveled through conversations, books, and generations of local tradition. Neither identity completely erases the other. Instead, they overlap in quiet ways, allowing every visitor to approach Overtoun Bridge through a different understanding of the same place. Folklore rarely survives because it answers every question. It survives because it gives people a way to explore uncertainty when evidence remains incomplete. The legends surrounding Overtoun Bridge emerged gradually as ordinary explanations struggled to satisfy every account. Wandering spirits, thin places between worlds, and unseen presences became symbols through which the mystery could be imagined, discussed, and remembered. Whether accepted as belief or appreciated as cultural tradition, these stories became part of the bridge's enduring legacy. At the same time, the persistence of these legends reminds us to distinguish between folklore and established fact. No scientific investigation has confirmed supernatural forces at Overtoun Bridge, and researchers continue to examine the mystery through animal behavior, ecology, and environmental conditions. Yet the absence of proof has never prevented stories from flourishing. Human beings have always responded to unexplained events with both careful inquiry and imaginative storytelling. The bridge reflects that deeply familiar pattern, where evidence and tradition continue their quiet conversation across the same landscape. As the mist gathers above the ravine and evening light fades through the trees, it becomes easy to understand why folklore found such fertile ground here. The surroundings encourage reflection long before they encourage conclusions. Every unanswered question leaves room for another interpretation, another whispered account, another visitor willing to wonder what earlier generations believed they had sensed in this secluded corner of Scotland. But the story is about to take another turn. Beyond legends and local tradition, investigators would eventually return with notebooks, measurements, interviews, and competing theories, searching not for ancient spirits, but for evidence capable of separating mystery from myth, while discovering how much uncertainty still remained beneath the quiet arches of Overtoun Bridge. The bridge now stands at the meeting point of science and tradition, where each explanation illuminates part of the mystery while leaving new questions behind. In 48 hours, we'll follow the final stage of the investigation, exploring the remaining evidence, the competing conclusions, and why Overtoun Bridge continues to challenge certainty even today.